And welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on our podcast today, which is called Leveraging Thought Leadership. So thanks for joining. Today, my guest is Ryan McCarty. Say hi, Ryan.
Hello, how's everyone doing?
So Ryan is a fascinating guy that I've had the privilege of knowing for a couple of years now. He had a really interesting career, and we'll get into that in the nonprofit world, and then moved over to the for-profit world, but didn't really change much about who he was and how he thinks. And he is the co-founder of a company called Culture of Good in Carmel, Indiana. He is the co-author of a book called Building a Culture of Good. He's a speaker. Culture of Good has a variety of products, offerings, and services to help people build a culture of good inside their mid to large size company. And he has been on a journey for a long time now, a couple of years into this crazy world of thought leadership. So thanks for joining us, and let's dive in, Ryan.
Sure, absolutely.
So let's see. How did this? Maybe tell us a little bit about how you took the experience from a totally different domain, which is the nonprofit world, and was able to transition that into the for-profit world by using pretty much the same principles and thinking. And it's not like you went off and said, I'm going to go get a PhD and then go figure this thing out, but it was sort of a natural, although not typical transition. So what was that like for you?
Sure, yeah. So I spent just over 20 years in nonprofit business, right? So everything from missions work to ministry. I did pastoring. My wife and I had started a church and really lived every single day having a sense of purpose and meaning behind what I was doing every single day. And after 20 years of doing that type of work, really felt like, I was going to spend the rest of my life just continuing in that path. I felt very fulfilled, like I said, and knew like this is what I was supposed to be doing. And it happened on one day that I met a businessman who was the CEO of the largest Verizon retailer in the country. Who happened to walk into my church on a Sunday morning and wasn't really a church person, but his wife dragged him there. At that time, I had a mohawk and tattoos, and he was like, "All right, I'll give this a shot." And that Sunday morning was really a shift for me because I got up and I talked about what I had talked many times before in terms of life purpose, but this particular message was about your why equaling your what, knowing why you do what you do. And Scott Moorhead, the businessman, was out in the audience, unbeknownst to me, came up after service and said, "I really want to grab lunch." And long story short, wanted to bring that message into his business and discover ways that he could inspire his employees to show up to work every day and know their why beyond just making a paycheck every Friday,
Right.
right?
And that message, which is interesting, although he heard it in a church, is a non-denominational message, right? It is a universal message. And he saw in that a value or a need to bring that into his business, which is basically a retail cell phone business.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, right? Because when you wrote that speech or sermon or however we want to call it, I don't think you were thinking that this is going to be applicable to a few thousand people working in a cell phone environment. Is that right?
No, yeah. That wasn't even in my head at all. Like I said, I had saw my trajectory being nonprofit work. I felt really called to that, and that idea of feeling called to something, I think, is a really fascinating topic as well. But yeah, it's a message that really resonates with each one of us, regardless of faith or background or financial status, whatever it is. I mean, it really translates to every single person. This sense that we wake up every morning and want to feel like our life matters, that what we're doing means something. Like we're not just in this robotic, cyclical, day by day, just wake up, go to work, go back, go home, make a paycheck at the end of the week, spend the money, and go back to the same routine, So living outside of that and really having a life of what I would call like transcending that, right? Like transcendence, like the going beyond, I think resonates with every single one of us. So
Yeah. So you and Scott meet, you buddy up. Scott brings you into the organization and creates
yeah,
a role for you, director of customer and employee relations, which probably didn't exist before. And so now you're working at a pretty large company, over $1 billion at this point. What are you doing? What is this? So you walk in there. I don't know if you still had the mohawk or not. You've got this,
I did.
awesome company to work for. You got a business card, you got a desk, you got a phone. What the hell do you do?
Well, I was so blown away at the fact that now all of a sudden I had over 2,000 volunteers out in the country and his employees and the resources to actually do the good that I was doing for the last 20 years, but not have to worry about the financial burden of raising funds and getting donations, right? So I just took what I had done for several years and just started learning how to scale that good, like whatever we did in the church or in the nonprofit world. I mean, we just scaled that, like a backpack giveaway that started with 25 backpacks the first year that my wife and I put on for our students in our local community. We scaled that in the first year that I came on to Scott's company, and gave away 60,000 backpacks with school supplies. So I mean, it really was a huge learning adventure for me because I had never done anything at scale like that. I went from like it wasn't as if what I was doing was insignificant, but the significance of taking what I was doing and multiplying that across 35 states and thousands of employees was really, for me, what I spent the first couple years doing is just learning how in the world to scale good.
Sure. So let's talk about the scaling of good, because in your old world, people would come to you on Sundays, right? And you'd get a turnout, 50, 100, 300, whatever it was. And you'd prepare for that and you'd deliver the message to them. And then that would sort of happen. And there'd probably be some interactions during the week and all those other things. But now it's totally different. Now there's 800 units around the country that each have a handful of employees. You can't go door to door to each unit, right? Because it would take you years and years and years to do that. So you've got to figure out different ways to get the message. You've got to get it to them. You've got to take advantage of digital tools. It has to resonate because they have a job to do, right? And they weren't relieved from their work responsibilities to go listen to this customer employee relation guy. So tell me
Right.
about your journey in terms of learning new modalities and how to communicate and connect and engage with people that you've actually never met, right? Like, so tell me about that.
Well, first, I just started asking questions, right? The only way to learn is to listen. I mean, really, we have to become really good listeners. Leaders have to really embark on that. And so I just started asking, like, what ways is communication going out internally now, externally? How is marketing being used? How are we marketing employees at that time? And really, this was about 6 years ago. They weren't using video, and so I had a background in using video and being creative in terms of how I was communicating things out. And so, you know, the creativity and the ability to shoot video and send that out and be creative and use some comedy in that really resonated with employees. And then just using social media and hashtags and really having employees share the good that they were doing in their local communities made everyone feel like they were part of something bigger. And we stepped in some landmines as well. We tried this real goofy thing of sending out 500,000 fortune cookies filled with like really inspiring messaging out to the stores so that they could hand those fortune.
Wait, so you're sending fortune cookies to cell phone
Yeah,
stores. So
yeah.
explain
Well,
there had to
yeah.
be a theory there,
It
but
didn't
what was,
translate very well because, again, back to learning how to communicate. But we thought, if a customer comes in, because a fortune cookie is unexpected, it would spark a conversation and it would kind of force the employee to talk about the good that the company wanted to do and we're doing in the local community. And so each fortune cookie had an inspiring message, but we sent those out, and a lot of when you send out 500,000 fortune cookies, it's hit or miss, and so we had stores like,
I never have, so I'll have to trust them.
well, don't.
Okay. All right, so that's rule one. So cool. So let me just recap. There's a lot of good stuff
Yeah.
here. So you're listening actively.
Yeah,
You're experimenting with various formats, right? So video worked better than fortune cookies, but I would argue that hey, the fortune cookies, if that was a good idea, you'd probably be doing that on a recurring basis, and people would be looking forward to getting the message via fortune cookie.
Yeah,
One thing that I will share, because I've observed it myself. That I think it was the first or second time I saw you speak at a TCC event, one of their rallies. They had about, I don't know, 1,000 of their employees come into one location, and the
Yep.
profile employees, probably a 26, 28-year old young person, couple of tattoos, probably a college dropout, working really hard,
Hmm.
might have been their first business trip or their first time on a plane for a lot of them. And you got up on stage and you inspired them and you talked to them. And it was like the Beatles were there. They felt so connected to you from the previous communication. And you're an internal, you're not an external speaker. You're an internal, one of them getting your paycheck from the same place. I'd never seen anything like that. So it was pretty amazing to create this sense of connection and followership and community, and giving them sort of permission to bring their souls to work and to think about their work in a different way, because it's a very transactional business. I come in, I want to upgrade to my iPhone, whatever, or Samsung, whatever. I want to leave and I want to go home. It's not necessarily something that's saving lives or changing the world. It's a necessary transaction, but you sort of help them transform how they see what they do. So anyway, really interesting there. So now let's fast forward a little bit. At some point, you and Scott get an idea that says, "Hey, we should take this process, this culture of good that's working really well inside the organization, and you have the data to support that at TCC in terms of employee satisfaction and customer satisfaction and store growth and all the good business metrics. So this isn't just a intuitive or it feels good or whatever. There's an ROI on this, and there's math that says these are good business decisions, so you can do good and do well. So now you guys say, you know what, maybe we should write a book, and maybe we should take this to the outside world. So how do we take this to the real world and write a book, and what does that look like? So tell us a little bit about what that journey has looked like.
Yeah, I mean it's been a journey and an adventure at the same time. Really, it's been a discovery in terms of why did the movement that we started at his company, why did it work, right? Like what was the main messaging that resonated with employees, and how did it reach beyond skepticism, back to what we talked about? How do you scale good, and how do you engage employees on a soul level? And so we started writing the book, and really started asking questions to each other, like how is this process going to help other companies, and is there possibility? And we started hearing from other businesses getting a hold of us saying, hey, we know and have heard and seen the good that you're doing in communities all across the country. Like how are you doing this? And we didn't have a good answer for them, quite frankly. And in
So it,
writing,
it forced you to actually codify
yeah.
the process and the methodology to be able to answer that question, right?
Yeah, yeah. Peter Drucker's whole statement of culture eats strategy for breakfast. We would like to say that it's better for culture and strategy to eat breakfast together. And that basically means you have to have a culture strategy. Like you're saying, like, what's the methodology? You can't just have this theory or philosophy and go into other companies and say, hey, if you get this inspiring pastor to come into your company, he'll start this cultural movement and everything's going to be butterflies and roses.
So step one is not find it and hire a dude with a mohawk. That's not step one in the
No,
process.
no, not at
Okay.
all. Step one is to get inspired yourself, knowing your own personal cause. You can't inspire others until you're first inspired. And I think leaders not only are good listeners, like we had talked about, but I think the second thing is leaders are very inspired people. And if you don't know your why, it's really difficult to convince others. It's what you saw when I got on stage. It's not an act, right? Like I don't get on stage and have a presentation and say something that I don't believe to the core of my very being. And so I think leaders listen, and they're also inspired. And so, yeah, the book really helped to codify, like, what was the methodology, and how did we get to a place where so many employees, we saw numbers up to 93% when surveyed, said that the culture of good and the work that we were doing really not only inspired them, but it gave them a sense of meaning and fulfillment in their everyday work. So we saw what I had talked about that Sunday morning, the why equaling the what was working, right? And we saw new customers coming in the door, and we saw sales go up 48%, same store sales, and we saw employee turnover go down 20%. Like that was significant to the ROI of the company.
Well, I want to touch on that meaning piece. So when you go to church or wherever you go on Sunday, right, you're going there to find purpose, amongst other things, and maybe community and some other things. But it's an hour or two, maybe three of your busy week. You're at work every day, 40, 50 plus hours a week. And I love the fact that you're giving them permission to find sort of the purpose there because it's where you spend the most time, right? And it's where you can have the most impact, even if you're not the CEO, if you're at the, frontline level at retail selling cell phones all day, you're giving these people permission to have impact to others and to share the message.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. And the company that you work for hopefully is profitable. And we say that profit's not evil. As a matter of fact, it's a great catalyst to do a tremendous amount of good. And if you can leverage that good to engage your employees on a soul level, then it's more than just, oh, they share my values, right? It's not like, oh, I can look on a poster board in the break room and say, yeah, I'm supposed to care about people, and I do care about people, and my company cares about people. But really living out your values, I think, is, so we go beyond values, and we talk about making promises, and promises have to either be not said or they have to be lived out, right? Like you have to back them up with action. And so that really makes a difference in the life of an employee, the experience of an employee, the customer. Makes sense for business and makes sense for doing good in the world. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Well, and I love that pivot from values to promises, because values I can be rather passive about, right? These are my company's values or these are my values. And, okay, that's cool. That's all fine and dandy. But a promise is a commitment, right?
Yeah.
Who am I promising to and what does that mean? So if I make a promise to you, that gets held at a higher level than a value that I observe or kind of sort of believe in or whatever. But it both personalizes it and gives it a level of ownership. I want to fast forward a bit. So the book comes out, and of course you do what every person does after a book comes out is you decide to live on a bus for 90 days and do a 30-city tour around the country. And this was not a broken down, dilapidated bus. It had a bathroom and a half, if I recall. What was that like? And
Well,
spreading that
well,
message.
yeah, that was something that I'll never do again, but it was amazing. Yeah, we went to 30 cities, did some amazing good along the way, gave back to teachers, engaged employees along the way, talked to companies and customers and really just got the message out that this is a movement, right? Like this isn't a company that embarked on doing a one-time moment or a day of service. This was a movement and really connecting with the hearts and minds of employees and customers and communities across the country. It was a fascinating experiment, really,
Awesome.
to see how to get the message out. Again, we tried fortune cookies, we did video, we got employees together every year with 1,000 of them and got on stage, and now we're going on this bus tour and really just getting the message out in a creative way. And thankfully for you and Thought Leadership Leverage for helping to help a lot of that and embark on that journey and to really help us build the system around the culture of good, so that we, as we're sharing the messaging, there's something to show for it. That's
Yeah.
been a huge
So,
help.
so we wrap up the bus towards South by Southwest, right? You get to speak there, which
Yeah.
is amazing. Now let's talk about where we are, right? So now it's about a year later, right? About a year and change since the book came out. You're doing a lot of keynoting, right? Because that's a great way to get the message out. You've got a variety of offerings and solutions to help others in terms of in a for-profit way. What's it like being a co-founder of basically a startup company that helps companies develop and leverage their cultures? What's that like? That's a whole
This is
different
uh,
thing.
yeah, the first word that pops into my mind without thinking much about it is just fun. I'm having a blast. And because I love learning and I love new experiences, I get really tired of doing the same thing over and over again. And every day is a new experience, because we're experimenting still, right? Like, how do we get the message out now to new companies? How do we embark in how do engagements look. Every single instance with every business that we talk to looks completely different from the next. So it's everything from keynotes to 1-day workshops, to 2-day workshops, to executive forums, to there's webinars and different things as well, and all the way through to enterprise level solutions to help companies build on a macro level, grand scale across all their employees. It's really fascinating to really discover how this is going to continue to multiply and do good in the world. And I'm just having fun doing it, to be honest. I feel just so fortunate.
And it's going to change and evolve. And I think fun is an often piece of it that people overlook, that if it isn't fun, why do it, right? You can have fun and build a business and grow and make a difference and do all those things. So as we start to wrap up here, give some advice to folks. Here's a couple things you should do, and here's some things that you definitely shouldn't do. So obviously, fortune cookies, we don't need to give out the name of your fortune cookie vendor, because I don't think that was an endorsement. But if you're, you never woke up one day and said, "Today I will be a thought
for
leader."
sure.
So, what would you say to somebody that's got ideas rattling around in their head that they believe can change the world, or they want to take that leap, if you will, into this universe of content and authorship and thought leadership? What would you share with them based on your experience?
Yeah, to the business owner, to the executive, I would say every company is now expected to do good in the world, right? But make sure that good is translated to employee volunteerism and engagement. So rather than writing a check to a large charity and taking a picture with it and telling employees, come work for us and feel proud of where you work because we do good together, actually do good together. Rip the check up, give the resources to your employees, get some people that really have a heart for doing good in the world, but also are very respected among their peers, and surround yourself with people like that as an owner, and really leverage that type of heart and soul within your business, and discover ways to engage employees where they work and where they live, and do good that way rather than writing a check. So rip the check up, and there's nothing wrong with giving to charity. I'm not saying that, but I would say you'll get a lot more engagement out of giving the resource to your people. So that's where I would start with that. To the person that's not the business owner, I talk to people all across the country, all across the world, that are frustrated many times because they're like, "Hey, I'm at the bottom of the totem pole. I can't make a lot of good happen." I would say, listen, when I came on to the company, sure, I had the ear of Scott Moorhead, the CEO, but honestly, I was in a cubicle. I started, for the first couple years, I was in a cubicle, and to be honest with you, I started part-time. I built the movement working as a part-time employee in a cubicle. So I can't believe the excuses of I'm not important enough within a company. Every single person can be a spark of inspiration of doing good in their team, within their department. So as I would say to the business owner, I would say to the person working in the cubicle, do good, share the good that you do, tell others why you care so much about that particular good that you're doing, and inspire others to join you. It's one of our promises.
Do it, share it, tell others, inspire others. I love that. Lastly, just tell people where they can find you. What your email? How do they contact you? How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah. Reach out to me at ryan@cultureofgood.com. You can also check out a lot about what we're about right on our website at cultureofgood.com. So yeah, if they want to reach out to me personally, I'd love to talk to anyone that's inspired by this and says, hey, we're ready to do some amazing good in the world. We want to inspire employees, ignite positive change in the world, and impact our bottom line. Reach out to me at ryan@cultureofgood.com.
Well, thanks. A lot of stuff in here. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing your journey. It has been a fascinating ride, right? And it's still going. It's still going strong. So
Oh
thank you so much
yeah,
for your
yeah.
time today, Ryan. Thanks.
Thank you so much for having me, Peter, and thanks for all those that are listening in.
To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.